Welcome to Beyond the Lab, a series by the Office of Career Development within the Biomedical Research, Education, and Training Department of the Vanderbilt University School of Medicine. My name is Kate Stewart, and I'm here today with Steve Damo. Welcome back. And you were a postdoc alum 2010 to 2013, so thanks for coming. Tell me about what you did when you were here at Vanderbilt.
Yeah, sure. Thanks for speaking with me, Kate. So, like you said, I came to Vanderbilt in 2010, and I worked in Dr. Walter Chazen's lab in the Department of Biochemistry and Center for Structural Biology. I was trained primarily as a biophysicist, and so had lots of experience in biophysical methods and techniques. And in Walter's lab, I began to take those techniques and apply them to problems of biomedical relevance. So I studied this human protein called calprotectin, which is actually the most abundant protein in your white blood cells. And it's an important part of the innate immune response. So when you get a bacterial infection, what happens is the white blood cells, in different types of infection models, but in many bacterial infections, the white blood cells sort of clump together and form this abscess, and then they release calprotectin, which basically serves as a sponge, and it soaks up transition metals. So just like we have to take our vitamins and minerals, pathogens do also. And so what calprotectin does then is basically it binds up the available transition metals and starves the bacteria, which allows our immune system to help fight them off.
Cool. So that's what you did at Vanderbilt. What did you do right after that?
So right after that, I moved all the way to Fisk University, which is also in Nashville, Tennessee, about a mile and a half, 2 miles away. And I've been there since 2013, where I'm an assistant professor of chemistry, biochemistry, and molecular biology. So Fisk University, for those of you, if you don't know, it's the oldest institution of higher education in Nashville. It was established in 1866, right after the end of the Civil War, as a place to educate the newly freed, men at the time, and eventually men and women. And so it's a historically black college, and so it's primarily undergraduate. It's home to the Jubilee Singers, who gave Nashville the Music City moniker. W.E.B. Du Bois, the founder of modern sociology, is an alum of Fisk University. And actually, St. Elmo Brady so I'm a card-carrying chemist. St. Elmo Brady was actually an alum of Fisk University, and he was the first African American to get his PhD in the United States. So a lot of history comes from Fisk.
Yes, very cool. So you are doing some teaching, some research, some service. Is that right?
Yeah, a lot of teaching, a lot of research, a lot of service, just like any professor.
So tell me about like your daily activities, or like your percentage of those pieces, and then maybe how that's evolved over time.
Yeah, sure, great. And so, I wasn't a product of a small liberal arts college, and as did my undergrad at NYU, my PhD at Berkeley, and then postdocs at Weill Cornell and Vanderbilt. And so, the idea of a liberal arts college was new to me until I started there, and surprisingly, and actually a pleasant surprise, my job is not like what many people think of when you teach at a college. And so it's not like I teach all day and do nothing. And particularly at HBCUs and small liberal arts colleges, the marriage of research and teaching is essential to the student experience and to what makes Fisk University special, like in this case. So on paper, the distribution is something like 50% teaching, 25% research, 25% service. In reality, it's probably 40% teaching, 40% research, and 20% service. And so, as an example, so the primary class I teach is physical chemistry, and it has a lab component to it. And so, in the lab, it's very different. When I was an undergrad, you kind of had this every week. You did an experiment. It was sort of this. You got a worksheet, and you went through step by step, and you knew what was, even if you messed up on the experiment, you sort of knew what was going to happen, right? But at Fisk University, when I teach the lab, I basically give the students an authentic example of a problem from my research repertoire and have them work on determining thermodynamics of protein folding or protein structure function relationships and things like that. And so yes, it's a lab class I'm teaching, but at the same time, I'm sort of double dipping, right? And so I'm having students who are registered, and these aren't students that work in my lab; they're taking the class with me, so that's one way of sort of being efficient with your time and being able to do research when you have a rather large teaching responsibility, right? So overall, my research group, I do very similar things to what I did, and what I learned at like at Vanderbilt. Broadly speaking, my group is interested in understanding what happens at the host pathogen interface. So how do proteins in our immune system fight off bacterial infection? And how do bacteria pathogens use virulence factors to evade host defenses? And we do, biochemistry, protein structure, biophysics, structural biology, that kind of thing. At any one point in time, I have anywhere from 12 to 15 undergrads working in my lab, 4 master's students, and then there's 1 senior research faculty that works in my lab along with me. So a large group by undergrad standards, but mostly, mostly undergraduates working. So the research questions are the same. The workflow has to be, modified. I don't have an army of postdocs to do all the work and things like that. And so that's been an adjustment.
So if, say, the middle of the school year, say it's a normal October day,
sure.
And you wake up in the morning, what are the what are the things that you do during your work day that people would know in your position, to see?
Sure. And so actually, so before I start the workday, I'm dropping the kids off at daycare. Probably I'm arriving to the lab somewhere between 8 and 9 in the morning, and I'm working on what I didn't have as a grad student or as a postdoc. I have my time management blocked where I sit through, I attend to any important emails, plan the experiments for the day, meetings, like those kinds of things, and I protect that time. My schedule is accommodating in that, I have I have 2 teaching heavy days, and then the other 3 days are marked primarily for, research meetings and, and other things. So I'll teach during a teaching day, I'll teach a class or 2 between, say, 10 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. But then throughout the day, one-on-one meetings with graduate students, group meetings, the standard sort of scientific enterprise stuff. And then, of course, as a faculty member, you have administrative meetings, department meetings to talk about curriculum, to talk about, budgetary issues, like these kinds of things.
Okay, good. Yeah. So what are some of the skills that you think would make a great position, like a grad student who would be interested in pursuing a job just like you? What are the skills that they need to have to do a job like yours?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I remember reflecting when I was a graduate student, just at the very beginning, the scariest thing for me was that, to get your PhD, you have to come up with something original and publish it. And it was so intimidating, right? Because you think of all the great scientists who came before you. It's like everything's been discovered already. You're not, what contribution can you make, right? And then over time, you realize that, okay, yes, this is, it's different. It's part of the deal, and, and you're able to do it. So I'll say, if you want to be at an institution like mine, where you do a combination of teaching, research, and mentoring, the first skill, and this is a given, you have to have strong research skills, period. And sometimes, it depends, because, if you come from a great institution like Vanderbilt, where you have a lot of research support, that may not be the best, because if you're used to having an army of technical support technicians and senior postdocs, staff scientists, and you don't learn all the different aspects of your project, that can be a struggle, because like I said, so I have I have a big research group, but I don't have a high technical skill level, and so I'm still in the lab. I have to, I don't have a lab manager or research assistant, and and I have to be able to, to do these functions myself if need be, and that's one key difference to being at a teaching institution. But then, okay, so once you have that, and then you still have to write proposals, because research has to be funded, or you can't do it. You have to be able to write papers, all the things that you need to be a great scientist. Period. You need that sort, as a baseline. Then, in addition to that, skill-wise, and so actually before skill-wise, I think. I don't want to sound cliche, but passion is really important. And so, like the difference between, being a slave to your job and having an enjoyable career, I think, is, you want to do something you love, right? And so for me, I came for Fisk for the opportunity to open doors for students like me. I did everything right on paper. I went to good schools and did all these kinds of things. But what made me successful, in looking back, were all the great mentors that I had. Like from my postdoc mentor to my dissertation advisor, and everyone else. And at at a place like at Fisk, where we do a lot of research, but we're not, I'm, at least on purpose, I'm not actually competing for science papers. I'm not looking for scientific fame, but we are trying to, contribute to the field. But where I'm really making a difference is that I'm training the students to become scientists for themselves. And it's, that even at the undergraduate level, I'll take freshmen who haven't even taken general chemistry, and I'll stick them in my, protein biophysics lab, and I'm like, okay, go, and, and so the ability to nurture and cultivate, young scientists is something that takes, like anything, it takes practice. And, it's not, you can't just say, okay, here's your pipette, here's your project, come back to me. You have to teach them in a way that, doesn't do the heavy lifting for them, but gets them started so that they can learn to discover their own scientists within them. So.
Okay. So, tell me about your work-life balance with your role, and how that works out with having some time
sure.
for your other life.
And so, so one of the great things about academia, and this even goes as a graduate student, is that you really do have the flexibility to do more than just be, like a slave to your job, right? And then this is where the passion comes in, because if you do, love what you do, then it's not work. So that said, I am, although I work hard, I'm not a workaholic. I have two. So I'm married to a beautiful woman, and who's more intelligent than I am, and I have two great young kids. And they remain, very much a priority to me. And so, every morning, I drop the kids off at daycare for now, and then every afternoon, I'm sure to pick them up. And on the weekends, the majority of my weekends are devoted to family. I set aside just, a few hours late Saturday night and a few hours Sunday afternoon to, those are so weekends are usually my teaching prep time. So putting together a class for the first time is a full-time job, but once you have that, all you have to do is keep things current and relevant, and that takes significantly less work. So, so I manage my time so that I could do most of that on the weekends. And then, I learned that, once I come home between 5 and 6 o'clock, I'm with the family till it's time for bed, and then, I'll stay up late and, that's when I write my grant proposals and write my papers and do those kinds of things. So, overall, I mean, I think it's a pretty good deal. As faculty, you also, you have to travel a lot, right? You have to give talks, you have to go to conferences, these kinds of things. And, when possible, depending on what the conference is, you can use this as an opportunity to bring the family along. And, so, yeah, I'd say overall it's pretty good. I mean, everyone works too much and works hard, but.
Well, good. Well, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Kate. It's great to be here.